The sun dipped low over Monza, casting long shadows across the paddock. Mechanics buzzed like hornets around their machines, journalists whispered rumors, and engineers stared into data screens with furrowed brows. It was race day, but something about the air felt wrong. In the back corner of the Apex Motorsport garage, Thomas River sat alone, helmet resting on his knee. The world saw him as the golden boy of Formula One, charming, precise, surgically fast. But behind his glacier blue eyes burned a cold fire. Across the thin divider, Alec Duval's crew prepped car number 17. Every wrench twist, every tire change, every diagnostic beep chipped away at Thomas's calm. Alec. The fan favorite. The rising star. The man who, according to the press, was redefining the sport. Thomas clenched his jaw. No one remembered who came second. No one printed posters of the guy who almost made it. And today? Alec had the faster setup. The better tire strategy. The pole position. Unless something changed. He stood up slowly, walked to the shared tool station between the garages. He'd studied every inch of Alec's car, obsessively. He knew where the brake line was most vulnerable, how the casing could be slipped off without leaving obvious marks. No one saw him. No one ever did when it mattered. The rubber hose felt warm in his hand. With a steady breath, Thomas took the small blade from his belt. One silent cut. A zip tie repositioned. And it was done. He walked back to his side of the garage, sat down again, and watched Alec climb into the cockpit, joking with his race engineer like nothing in the world could touch him. "Let's get this win, mate," Alec shouted, giving a thumbs up to the crew. Thomas didn't smile. He put on his helmet. Then the race director's voice crackled through the paddock speakers. "Final checks. Grid formation in 5 minutes." Outside, the crowd roared. The engines screamed to life. And Alec Duval drove toward his last race. The grid was chaos, as always, pit crews scrambling, cameras flashing, engines snarling like caged beasts. Thomas's car rolled into second position, right behind Alec on pole. The red lights blinked overhead. One by one. Thomas's visor fogged slightly with his breath. He didn't wipe it away. 5 lights. 4. 3. 2. 1. Out. The launch was clean. Alec surged ahead. Thomas tucked in right behind, drafting through the first chicane. The race had begun. For the next 10 laps, it was a dance, the two of them slicing through Monza's legendary curves at over 300 km per hour. Alec held his lead, but barely. Thomas was always in the mirrors, always lurking, like a shadow that wouldn't fade. Then, on lap 11, something changed. Alec approached the Variante Ascari at full tilt, late braking into the left-hander. But the car twitched, barely, but enough. The rear tires locked. Then came the scream. Not of engines, of carbon fiber shredding. Alec's car spun violently, skipping across the gravel at impossible speed. It hit the barrier's nose first, a deafening crunch of metal and glass. Everything stopped. Yellow flags. Then red. Then silence. Thomas pulled into the pit lane, heart pounding, but not from guilt. From panic. This wasn't just a spin. This was bad. Worse than he planned. He looked at the screen inside the garage. The replays had already started. Slow motion impact. Debris flying. Medical crew running. But what chilled him wasn't the crash. It was the expression on the face of Alec's race engineer. Pale. Frozen. Whispering into the headset. No pulse. He's gone. The paddock was silent. The race was cancelled. The body was already on its way to Milan. Thomas sat in the team trailer, suit still half-zipped, gloves clenched in his lap. Around him, the walls felt like they were closing in. "Freak break failure," the team principal said, pacing behind him. "No warning signs. Nothing in the telemetry." But Thomas knew better. He'd made sure of that. Yet something bothered him. He hadn't cut the line completely. Just weakened it. Enough to throw Alec off, not kill him. That wasn't the plan. Now Alec Duval was dead. And Thomas was a murderer. He stared at his reflection in the darkened window, helmet in hand. And then the door creaked open. A figure stood in the doorway. Alec's race engineer. Eyes red. Voice flat. "I know it wasn't a malfunction." Thomas didn't flinch. "Excuse me?" he asked, carefully. The engineer, Max, stepped in, shutting the door behind him. There were scratches on the clamp. Tool marks. "Fresh ones," Max said. "You think no one would check? After this?" Thomas stood up, trying to keep his tone calm. "Are you accusing me of?" Max interrupted. "I'm not accusing. I'm warning. I saw you near his car before the race." A pause. A stare. "You have one chance, Thomas. Fix this. Or I will." He left, leaving behind a silence more deafening than the crash. Thomas sat back down. Sweat beading down his neck. His hands were shaking now. He'd survived the race. But the cover-up was just beginning. Night fell over Monza like a shroud. The paddock, once buzzing with celebration and adrenaline, had turned into a funeral ground. Crews packed equipment in silence. Spotlights still glared over the empty pit lane, casting long, skeletal shadows. Thomas sat in the corner of the Apex trailer, staring at his gloves. They were still smudged with brake dust and sweat. He hadn't changed out of his suit. The race was cancelled. The championship now meaningless. Alec Duval was dead. Every few minutes, a voice from the medical center crackled over the team radios. Updates. No good news. Then, finally, the final one. Time of death, 15:28. No one spoke after that. A quiet knock. Thomas didn't look up. He thought it was his engineer, or maybe someone from PR to prep a statement. Instead, a low, hoarse voice said, "You and I need to talk." Max. Alec's race engineer. Thomas lifted his eyes. Max looked like hell, pale, soaked in sweat, eyes red. But there was a fire in him now, something sharp and dangerous. He stepped inside and closed the door slowly behind him. "I know it wasn't a failure." Thomas froze. Max dropped a small data tablet onto the table between them. Telemetry was off. The pressure dropped too fast. "There's no way that's mechanical. Not without warning." Thomas swallowed hard. "Maybe the line ruptured," he said. Max smiled, but it wasn't kind. "I checked the hose myself." Max slid the tablet across the table. On the screen, a close-up photo of the cut brake line. The rubber was cleanly sliced, not torn, not ruptured. No signs of heat or pressure trauma. Just, a blade. Max's voice dropped to a whisper. "You were seen." Thomas's throat tightened. "By who?" Max leaned in. "Alec's mechanic. He saw you near the car. Said he didn't think much of it, but now. It's all starting to click." Thomas's mind raced. He wanted to scream, to deny, to run. Instead, he kept his face neutral. "You're throwing around serious accusations without proof." Max stood up slowly. His jaw clenched. "This isn't a witch hunt. It's justice." He walked to the door, paused, and looked back. "If you don't come forward, I will." The door shut. And for the first time, Thomas felt real fear. Later that night, Thomas stood alone in the team garage. The place looked like a skeleton, stripped down, half empty, lights dimmed. He stood in front of Alex's car, or what was left of it. The team hadn't even had time to disassemble it before it was impounded by the FIA. The number 17 still shone under the dim overheads. Bits of dirt still clung to the side pods. The front was crushed inward, warped and broken. Thomas reached out slowly. His fingertips touched the halo, twisted and scorched. Flash. A memory. Alec laughing before the race. You nervous? Thomas, smirking. You wish. Alec, let's make it clean. No drama today, huh? He blinked the memory away. Then he looked up, and saw his reflection in the side mirror. Not the golden boy. Not the superstar. Just, a man. Haunted. Cornered. Alone. A man who killed. He couldn't sleep that night. In the hotel room, he sat on the edge of the bed, still in his undershirt, watching the fan spin on the ceiling. The city outside was quiet. The storm was inside him. Max had evidence. A witness. If he came forward, it would be over. Unless Thomas got ahead of it. Took control of the story. Twisted it. He opened his laptop. Typed a message to his agent. We need to talk. Urgent. Need PR strategy. Possible investigation coming. He stared at the blinking cursor for a while. Then deleted it. And instead typed. Tell the team I want to speak at the hearing. Alone. Send. Thomas closed the laptop and lay down in the dark. But the silence pressed in. Not just the silence of the room, the silence of what he'd done. And in that silence, he finally understood something Max had said. This wasn't about punishment. This was about truth. And truth always finds a way. Later that night, Thomas broke into the team's telemetry center. He wasn't looking for data, he wanted footage. From the garage. From the track. Anything that might show him. He knew the camera above Bay 3 had a blind spot. That's why he chose that angle to cut the hose. But, what if he was wrong? He scrubbed through the footage. Minute by minute. Frame by frame. And then, he saw it. A mirror. A reflection. His own hands, bent over Alex's car. Blurred, but unmistakable. Suddenly, a voice spoke from behind him. Looking for something? It was Max. And this time, he wasn't alone. The FIA's technical inspector stood beside him. It was just past midnight when Thomas slipped into the Apex telemetry lab. The room was low-lit, almost surgical in its quiet. Screens buzzed faintly, showing engine readouts, lap deltas, GPS lines tracing ghost-like car paths over the Monza map. But Thomas wasn't here for lap times. He moved like a ghost himself, hoodie up, face shadowed. Every few steps, he glanced behind him. Paranoia came easy these days. He approached the workstation labeled Garage Cam 3, Bay Zone. He hesitated. His hand hovered over the keyboard like it might burn him. Don't look. You'll find what you don't want to see. He typed anyway. The footage loaded. The feed jumped back to 4 hours before the race. Mechanics in fluorescent vests moved like ants. Alex's car gleamed under the pit lights. A dozen moments passed uneventfully. Then. There he was. Thomas. Not clear. Not full face. But him. His walk. His posture. That slight hunch in the shoulders when he's thinking too much. He scrubbed forward, sweating now. Hands shaking. Then he saw it. At 12:32 p.m., the camera on Bay 3 caught a flicker of reflection, not from Alec's car, but from the mirror panel of the garage wall. In that reflection, Thomas crouching by the car. Tool in hand. Reaching under the floor. Fast. Efficient. Like someone who'd done this before. The breath left his body. He leaned back in the chair. It's there. It's over. Looking for something. Thomas flinched. He hadn't even heard the door open. Standing behind him, Max. And beside Max stood a second figure. Thin. Sharp-eyed. White shirt with the FIA crest stitched on the pocket. Lucas Sans, FIA Technical Commissioner. Mind explaining why you're reviewing secured garage footage at 1 in the morning? Sans asked, voice like a scalpel. Thomas tried to play calm. Just, reliving the day. Processing. Max stepped forward. We found tool marks on the brake hose. Sliced from underneath. The team wants answers. Thomas exhaled slowly. So you're accusing me? Based on a reflection. Not just that, Sans replied. He pulled a small drive from his pocket and plugged it into the terminal. Another angle. Different camera. Lower. From behind the tires. This one. No reflection. No blur. Just him, clear as day, crouching by Alec's car, and doing something he never should have done. Thomas stood frozen. Max watched him, not with anger, but disappointment. Deep, cutting disappointment. I told you, Max said quietly. I told you to fix this. Sans crossed his arms. You understand the severity of this situation, Mr. River. This is beyond racing. This is criminal sabotage. Thomas's throat tightened. In his mind, everything rushed at once, the crowd, the champagne he never sprayed, the cheers for Alec, the burning rage in his chest that made him act. He looked at the screen again. His own betrayal playing in a loop. I need a lawyer, he whispered. Sans gave a single nod. We figured you'd say that. He handed Thomas a sealed envelope. Official notice, investigation opened. FIA. Italian Motorsport Authority. And criminal court. Morning came, but it didn't bring relief. The news had already broken. Leaked video implicates Thomas River in Alec Duval crash. It was everywhere. Twitter. Reddit. YouTube thumbnails screaming "murder on the grid," with his face frozen mid-expression. Fans raged. Former champions called for lifetime bans. Sponsors vanished overnight. By 9 a.m., his agent texted one word. We're done. Thomas stared at the TV in the hotel room. A replay looped. Alec's crash. His hands on the car. His face walking away. He smashed the screen with a lamp. Glass shattered across the floor like broken memories. That afternoon, he stood at the edge of Lake Como. The wind tugged at his jacket. A stone path curled behind him like a spine. He held his phone in one hand. The other trembled. You could disappear, he thought. You could vanish. Into water. Into nowhere. Let history sort it out. Then. The phone buzzed. Unknown number. One new message. He deserved better. You're going to pay for what you did. Watch your back. Thomas stared at the screen. Then looked over the cliff's edge. The water below rippled, dark and endless. But he didn't jump. He turned around. Because he realized something terrifying. Someone else knew. And they weren't going to wait for justice. The next day, everything changed. The FIA launched an official investigation. Rumors flooded the paddock. Reporters circled like vultures. Social media exploded. But Thomas denied everything. Sabotage. Insane. Brake failure. Tragic. Coincidence. Terrible, but possible. The tribunal was scheduled. Behind closed doors. No cameras. No fans. But there was one thing Thomas hadn't planned. The mechanic. One of Alec's own. He came forward. I saw Thomas. I didn't think much of it, until now. The room fell silent. The judges looked at Thomas. Do you have anything to say in your defense? Thomas looked up, eyes empty. And said nothing. 3 days after the crash, Thomas sat in the FIA's glass office in Geneva. Rain lashed the windows like it wanted in. He had barely slept. The walls seemed to pulse with judgment. Outside, reporters formed a blockade, cameras, microphones, long lenses pointed like rifles. Inside, silence. Then, a soft knock. A woman in a black blazer entered with a folder in her hands. Mr. River, she said, voice clinical. The tribunal has reviewed the evidence. We're moving forward. The hearing begins tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. You'll be seated in Chamber B. She placed the folder in front of him. Sealed. Heavy. Inside, she added, you'll find a list of all witnesses called against you. Thomas didn't touch it. Do I get to speak? He asked. The woman gave the ghost of a smile. You'll get your turn. Whether they'll believe you, that's another matter. The next morning, the hall outside Chamber B was cold and full of eyes. Eyes that followed him. Judged him. Thomas spotted familiar faces in the crowd. Max, Alec's race engineer, stone-faced. Team principals, whispering in clusters. Old rivals, once jealous, now united in contempt. And at the far end, silent, unreadable, Lucas Duval. Alec's younger brother. Dressed in a crisp black suit. Watching Thomas with eyes that didn't blink. Thomas looked away. The door to the chamber opened. It was time. The tribunal room was sterile, part courtroom, part boardroom. No cameras. No press. Just the sharp presence of 5 judges seated in silence. A panel of investigators sat to the left. Behind them, evidence monitors. On one, a still frame from the garage footage. Thomas's hands on Alec's car. Mr. River, the lead judge began, you are here today under investigation for deliberate sabotage resulting in the death of Alec Duval. This hearing is to determine your accountability, your intent, and whether criminal proceedings should follow. Thomas didn't blink. Do you wish to give a statement? He stood. But before he could speak, the door at the back opened. An unexpected figure entered. Her. Isabelle Duval. Alec's widow. Isabelle took the stand. Blonde hair tied back, black blouse, voice like glass. Her words were calm, but every syllable cut. I watched Alec's final race from the paddock. I saw him wave at the fans. Laugh with his crew. He had no idea he was seconds away from death. She looked directly at Thomas. I don't need to hear telemetry. I don't need to see the footage. I know he didn't crash by accident. Silence. A long pause. And then. I'm not here for justice, she said. I'm here to make sure the world sees who you really are. His palms were sweaty as he stepped toward the microphone. He glanced at Isabelle, then at Lucas, who sat behind the judges like a shadow. I didn't mean to kill him, Thomas said, voice quiet. I made a mistake. I was angry. I wanted him to lose. I didn't want him dead. But he is, one judge said flatly. Thomas closed his eyes. I know. Max, sitting in the witness row, whispered something to the inspector beside him. They both shook their heads. You were one of the best drivers of your generation, the judge continued. And you threw it all away in a moment of ego. Then came the verdict. The panel finds sufficient evidence to refer this case to Italian criminal court. Effective immediately, Thomas River is suspended from all motorsport activities under FIA sanction. Thomas didn't argue. He just sat down. And stared ahead. Like a man already buried. That evening, in a hotel room in Geneva, Thomas poured himself a glass of whiskey with a shaking hand. Rain drummed on the window. He opened his laptop. One new email. No subject. No sender. He clicked. It was a video. Shot on a phone. Grainy. Low light. The screen showed his apartment door, filmed from across the street. Someone was watching his home. A second later, a message appeared on screen, handwritten on paper. This is only the beginning. The next morning, Isabelle Duval stood in front of the press. We don't just want Thomas River banned, she said, we want him prosecuted. Fully. Publicly. Lucas stood beside her. He didn't speak. He just looked straight into the cameras. Behind them, an image of Alec flashed on the LED screen. Smiling. Frozen in time. Far from Geneva, in a small garage on the outskirts of Medina, a man was watching the same video that Thomas received. He wore a black hoodie. No visible ID. On the wall behind him, printed photographs of Thomas River, Alec Duval, garage maps, technical drawings. He pinched out the screen to freeze a frame of Thomas's hands on Alec's car. Then he pulled a phone from his pocket. One contact. No name. He hit call. It's time, he said. Voice calm. Cold. I'll make sure he doesn't make it to trial. The verdict, guilty. The punishment, lifetime ban from motorsport. But the public didn't wait for the ruling. Thomas became the most hated man in racing overnight. Fans screamed at him in the streets. Sponsors pulled out. His face disappeared from posters, interviews, history. He returned home, to silence and dust. No calls. No future. No forgiveness. He thought about Alec often. The way he smiled on the grid. The way he always waved to the mechanics. The way he died, believing his brakes had failed. And Thomas? He watched old races in the dark. Sometimes he didn't remember cutting the hose. Sometimes he did. But the worst part? He never felt sorry. 5 years later. Monaco. A new face in the paddock, Lucas Duval, Alec's younger brother. Rookie. Fast. Charismatic. And driving for Apex Motorsports. Reporters swarmed him. Cameras followed his every step. Do you race for your brother? They asked. Lucas smiled faintly. No. I race for myself. He looked at the wall of past champions. At the empty space where Thomas's photo used to be. And then he turned to the press. But I do plan to finish what he started. Somewhere, in a faded apartment above Milan, Thomas River watched the race alone. Lucas sped around the final corner. First place. Fastest lap. Podium. The crowd roared. Champagne flew. Thomas didn't blink. He leaned forward, turned off the TV. And in the reflection of the dark screen, he saw something he hadn't seen in years. Tears. His own. But too late. Always too late.